Recording started.
Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's Matrexit discussion group call for tactical sovereignty. And this is getting down into about the middle of the year almost. Pretty amazing. 2022.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's right. And we got Timothy Damron on here with us this evening as well. So, I don't
Hey,
know.
man, glad to be back.
I don't know really. I was thinking a lot about the direction to go in this evening and things. And I think maybe a good idea would be, why don't you just start out and let people know, what got you into this whole saga that you've now found yourself in. I mean, the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of covering some of the things that draw people into this. And a lot of times, one of the first rabbit holes people fall down is the Patriot rabbit hole, or people get into the whole driver's license issue or whatever it is, and they find out there's a whole lot more to it than they ever realized. And of course, there's a whole lot of people out there just looking for the free money too. So anyway, I'm just going to step back right now and let you explain to everybody your position and what got you where you are today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. And thanks for having me here. And I just want to thank everybody that's here that's listening. Honestly, my intent to be here today is to get the word out. There's dangerous stuff floating around out there, but we're going to talk about probably some of that dangerous stuff too. But more importantly, I think we'll just follow the script here. I'm going to tell you what got me into all this. You know what got me into all this? And when I say all of this, the freedom movement, the sovereign movement, you know what I ultimately found out is that I was in I need to know the truth movement. Yeah. And so what happens is when you start stumbling along and you've kind of figured out, one of the videos I've done, and I do one like every year, is what to do when you wake up. What do you do when you figure out everybody's lied to you? Well, you need to start assessing the situation and don't assume anybody knows anything, because in most cases they don't. You know why? Because they're people just like you and me, Brian. And, we're just normal people. We woke up in this life. We got birthed into this life, and here we are. And now we have a responsibility. I think Cat Williams said it perfectly on his he had a stand-up thing he did on Netflix. He says, and even and it's really just that thing actually. There's the truth, and then there's everything else. So how do you know if you have the truth? I think you know if you have the truth when everything that person is saying to you, you can rationalize it. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to verify it. A lot of times we can rationalize it, and then we just start, then we just go stupid. But verify it. Okay, if somebody says that they're a Navy SEAL, go look. It's not hard. If somebody says that they've gotten judges fired, or they've done all these cases and they've done this, that, and the other thing, you know what? Go look. And if you can't find it, don't call these idiots and ask them if they have it or not, because you clearly know that they don't. That is called everything else. And so, would you agree, Brian? That's like everything else, and it's not really truth, because if there's one element of mistruth in there, think of it like this. Think of your life as like a perfect dinner. How much cat litter would you allow to have on your plate? 0, right? Why would we allow to have crap in our truth when we're looking for truth? Why do we feel like that's something we got to put up with? Because we don't. We don't have to put up with that stuff, right, Brian? You could just go research it. That's what we do. And that's what we've been doing for years. And that's really what drove me to all this, is that I figured out that a lot of people have been lying to me my whole life. And you know what? One of these days, you'll probably figure it out too, if you haven't already, out there, everybody. And so you've got to get some real facts. Okay. And you start going down these rabbit holes, and you start looking for things and this and that. And what you start seeing more than anything else, I think, is people's agendas. I think you start seeing what they're trying to accomplish, you know, because they want to get rich. They want to go to the IRS. They want to tap into the Siskiyou Trust because it's a credit card or the black card and all this stupid stuff. Dude, stop. I mean, and just so we can stop right now, let me just clear up the whole black card thing. Let's clear that up real quick. Black card is a very exclusive card that will cost you a small fortune in fees to maintain. But if you're able to put out that kind of cash and you're making that kind of income and you can do that, then you can get discounts on concert tickets and just about anything else that involves serving the world. Okay. So there you go. There's the black card. That's it. It's in the story. It's just, it's a first class seat for a credit card. Pretty much. That's all it is. It's not anything else other than that. But people will blow it out of proportion and say, "Oh, this is how you get into your Siskiyou Trust." Have you heard that, Brian? You get the black card and it's automatically hooked up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the first things that you run across. And I'll tell you what, you just look at, I mean, one of the things that I find interesting that actually provides us the most hope is that anything that the state or a huge organization like a government tries to accomplish, they're normally not very good at it. And especially keeping records and things like that, very, very inadequate at it. And so if people think that they're going to maintain a secret private trust on each and every single individual out there, I am sorry. That is further from anything that's even falls into the line of being rational thinking. I mean, because when you stop and think about each individual trust is going to require numerous people to be involved with it. And when you're looking at, pushing 350 million people in the USA, I mean, really stop and think about that logically.
Well, if I have to say, Brian, I kind of agree there is a trust out there, and I agree that there are lots to operate that trust. But here's the thing: it takes the Department of Labor, it takes the Department of Treasury, it takes all of those things work. And they're just basically pass through accounts, basically the stuff on your credit, and I've talked to all kinds of people down there, but from what my knowledge or what my research has taught me about most of this stuff is that there is a trust that is there. There is a Siskiyou Trust. There is this, that, and the other thing. However, you're not going to touch it, not going to get to it because, again, just like Brian said, there's a lot of people that need to be in place to make sure that runs okay. And so, consequently, they have a bunch of as David Straight would say, compartmentalized ideas. Now, that's the only credit he gets for tonight, by the way. But anyway, this is the smartest thing he said. Everything else is, but everything else is people with a guy. But I will say that it is out there. You're not going to access to it. You're not going to access it because it's way up in Department of State stuff. But here's what you can do, and this is what people miss, I think, more than anything else. If you were a dancer and you knew how to dance, but you only knew one dance, if you were that dancer, I'd be out there dancing that one dance the best way I know how. And you know what? That's the way we got to look at this thing this thing called life. Okay. When you figure out where your place is in all this and where you're supposed to be socially, spiritually, whether you decide to be on the true side or everywhere else, that's going to determine your measure, I believe. And I believe that that's going to determine your wealth factor and things like that. Knowledge is something that has been held back, and they do that so it can keep people stupid, so other people can take advantage of other people. Think of all the hazing that goes on in high school between freshmen and seniors. Why? Knowledge. Simple. It's just simple knowledge. You go to college and you might get paddled for a fraternity or something. Well, because you I think this is where we are. Not to get too diluted into it, but that's kind of what I did in my walk. Personally, my successes have been found and watching my enemies. Watch the guys that are squeezing you the most. If you follow the money and you they're squeezing you, then you can learn how to stop that. But if you don't learn how, then you're going to stop it. Would you agree? I mean, I think that's kind of a general, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's in life. It's part of knowing, you know, like you say, like I talk about the schoolyard. You know, certain kids are going to know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with, and that's a lot of what you're seeing. Now, I don't know
Different jurisdiction.
I don't know if the audio is coming in like fuzzy and in and out for you, but it kind of sounds like it on my end. However, this platform is pretty stable, so once this is done, I can go back and check the recording.
I'm gonna try to connect to my Wi-Fi here and see how that works out.
But yeah, you know, so much of this really is learning the parameters.
All right. Hey, there we go.
What can be done, what can't be done. Yeah, that's sounding really good.
Is that better now? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's sounding really good.
All right, man. Thank you, AT&T. This message was brought to you by AT&T. Like, for real, I just clicked it. It happened. Huh?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. And it's not the Verizon guy either, although I think he went to somewhere else. I think he's with Sprint now. I don't know, something like that. But you know, I see that in these guys. They come by and they wave this stuff around and they just try to trick people. And actually, and not to, you know, take too much away from this, but I have a gal that's going to be on the call probably this week, but she's going to be telling her story probably next week. And this woman did some time in the penitentiary for listening to these yoo-hoos with the 1099 stuff and all that. There's just so much bad information out there. So we're going to have her on my Monday night call. So you guys are always welcome to join us. And you know, we just want to continue to expose these teachers. I mean, as quick as they come up, man, I'm ready to shut them down. I'm so sick of them all because people are going to jail. You know, you got these Anavan Wright people, and you know, they all think they're state nationals, and I think it's hysterical. And you know, I started to see the badges again, and the fake cops, and the real guns with the fake cops, which means you have real criminals at that point. You know. So I'm seeing this stuff starting to kind of crank up again. I'm seeing this little revolution thing happening again. Are you kind of seeing that happening, Brian, out in your neck of the woods out there?
Yeah, I've noticed this, and you know, I've been in this for. I was looking today at the count. Somebody was mentioning to me the count on the talk show here, and tonight is 292. So pushing 300, which means we're over the 5-year mark. You know, so I would say it's about 6 years that I've been into this. And you know, the reason why I started this up is because there's a lot of people in the group had questions and things. And so I said, well, we'll start this up weekly and people can all come together and meet each other. And lo and behold, when you do that, all the voices just disappear. And it's like, okay, so you're left kind of carrying the water yourself. You know what I mean? But yeah, what I've noticed over the years is you see waves of patterns of things flow through. And the 1099 thing will be a wave or a pattern that you see flow through. There'll be the American State National thing that's a wave that you see flow through. And then it dies off after that group of people kind of learns the truth about all of it. And then when they go to jail. And then when the newbies, some other new groups of people come along and stumble across it, they think they've just discovered something brand new again, which, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, and just to clear things up for people, you know, when I first started hearing a lot of these things, a lot of it like didn't make sense to me. So I stood back, quit listening to a lot of these different gurus or whatever, and I started studying basically what civil law is, how it really works, how municipalities really work, how nations govern themselves amongst each other, and that kind of thing. And then went back, and when I heard some of these people talking, it really just made my ears bleed. I just couldn't listen to it. You can do something as simple as look at what's recognized as far as even with the USA and go to the Department of State and look and try and find American State National. You're not going to find it anywhere. The bottom line is that all U.S. citizens are nationals, but not all nationals are U.S. citizens.
There you go. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. A lot of times they have the right law, but the wrong procedure. You know, and I'm seeing a lot of that. I had
Well,
some guy yelling at me the other day about his about all the laws he knows about driving and traveling. But what he failed to understand is that his car has a certificate of title and it's been designated as a motor vehicle. And until you change that, you're not traveling. You're in a commercial vehicle that should be doing commercial things, and you're not. And you really haven't fixed it. You just woke up and saw a little crack in the glass. And that's what I see more often than not.
yeah, they see one little thing and they think they're going to jump on it. I mean, I remember one of the first things that I saw that just made me laugh was that I would see people go and say, oh, that their boyfriend or their girlfriend and them got together and they had a party and hit a bonfire and they burnt their birth certificates and they burnt their social security cards and they burnt their driver's licenses. And I'm thinking, what did you accomplish? You didn't accomplish anything. Number one, those things all stand for a juridic entity that the state created. And guess what? Even if you burn your copy of a piece of paper, doesn't mean that that entity still doesn't exist somewhere else. It's not that piece of paper that causes that entity to exist and to be there. All you've done now is you've screwed yourself as being able to operate in life, which is going to be pretty much always commercial.
Yeah,
And
you commingled it. You commingled your estate is what you've done.
One of the things I think I found out, Timothy, that I think you've found out as well, is that in learning about how money works and the commercial system works, the situation is that everybody has been taught how to do it like the peasants do it. Oh, you do it this way because everybody else does it. Oh, you mean all the other peasants do it that way? As long as you're going to do it the way the peasants do it, you're going to remain a peasant. And guess what? The upper 1%, 2%, 3%, they're not doing it the same way as the peasants are doing it. And that's really where the problem is. The problem is that we're not handling our affairs correctly.
It's because we're not told how to do it. I mean, people miss a very simple thing. And I'll tell you this, and I'll just put this out there, just throw some nuggets out there for you. For the listeners, of course, you already know this, Brian, but walk into your bank, that one that loaned you $400,000 on your house. And then when you're in there making your house payment, you're going to see a sign up there. It says they're only insured for $250,000. Well, how did they loan you that money then? Where did it come from? Because they're not even insured to loan you that kind of money. How does that even make sense? Well, it does, but not to someone with a slave mentality, not to somebody that's asleep. They're just making house payments. I mean, realistically, if Brian, if you and I were receiving $2,500 a month, I think it's probably an average mortgage on the low side. But let's just say an average entry-level mortgage right now these days is about $2,500 a month with your taxes, which is really just rent, but whatever. Anyway, and you figure that if you were receiving $2,500 a month for 30 years and you never told the IRS about it, don't you think that would raise a red flag? Well, then that should tell you that they're doing something different than you're doing. And so when I figured that out, that's when I started figuring out what they're doing. And then when I started watching what they were doing, you're doing pretty good. These guys that sit around in penitentiaries, they got nothing else to do but sit around and watch the hacks all day long to figure out what they're doing. They can tell when they broke up with their girlfriends. They know everything. Why? Because they're paying attention. We got to have minds like that too, not the criminal part, but the part that pays attention. And I think we're missing that. I yield.
Yeah, no, it was making me think, here, a week or so ago, somebody I work with, they saw me kind of like slapping a piece of paper against my hand and then going and putting it into my stuff that I carry at work. And they looked at me and they kind of squinted. They're like, Brian, like, you still get a paper paycheck? And I said, absolutely. She said, why? And I said, because if I'm going to work, I want to be the one that gets paid, not the bank. Why is everybody so happy with letting the bank be the one that gets paid first when you work? And I said, have you really paid attention to your bank account? Are you really sure if that money in there is yours or not? And probably a week later, I saw her again. And the first thing she did is she came up to me and she says, okay, Brian, so we're just gifting our money to the bank. So what do we do when everything falls apart and things shut down and all of the things that we have gifted to these financial institutions is locked up and we don't have access to it? Now, what are we going to do? Which I thought that was kind of cool. It's like, oh, you've been doing some research.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things you can do. Well, you should probably brush up on some FDCPA law and understand that once the doors close and they don't receive your payments anymore, that you don't have a debt anymore. I'll say that one more time so it settles in. If it comes down to a point where we can't make our payments and they're not receiving our payments, the worst thing you can do is sit at home and call a bunch of people on the phone and ask them why. The smartest thing you can do is make a record. Send them notice. Let them know, hey, you breached our contract. You're no longer servicing this loan anymore according to what I'm paying you to do. And if you really went down the road a little bit further and you did your research on your home mortgage, you would know that it was held in trust. You would know that you're the grantor and you created that mortgage. So guess what? When your officers and the servicers are not doing what they're supposed to do, you have a lot of power. But people don't manage their stuff. You know what they do? They call the 1-800 I'm pissed off number and they sit on hold for 15 minutes. And then they get all this big show and everything all stepped up so they can repeat it 90 times to their friends and feel better about themselves. But at the end of the day, it's still the slave and you're still under the nickel, man. And you're under their nickel. So, before you get involved in something like a home mortgage, a 30-year commitment, you probably ought to know what you're getting into first. And better yet, you should know what it's going to take to get you out of it. That's right. I'm going to tell you, my best advice for everyone is to plan to fail. If you plan to fail, then all of your stops are in place. All of your safeties are in place. So if you fail, you can do nothing else but succeed. So plan to fail. Plan to know that people are going to do stupid things. And you know what? The government's falling apart. Let's just stop BSing ourselves. The whole thing's falling apart. USA is bankrupt. I don't care what David Strait says. They're bankrupt. They're not there anymore. Okay? It's over. And so what we have is we have 50 states running around trying to figure out how we're going to keep this public trust intact and how we're going to keep this legal fictions and all this other stuff intact so we can still keep running to the casino every month with our money and our credit. So these are the things that are really going on. So these are the things I think we need to pay attention to. These are the things that we need to watch. These are the shift changes that the penitentiary guys are watching. Okay. We need to be watching those things. We need to be watching our lenders. And when we feel free to ask them all the questions you want, because the minute they stop asking your questions, the minute they stop answering your questions, you have a breach of contract. But you don't have a breach of contract unless you tell them so. Well, who's going to tell them so? Well, you might need to call a lawyer. I don't think so. You need to be a man. You need to be a woman. And you need to take some responsibility for what you got yourself involved in and go fix it and manage it. Because if you don't, they're going to manage you. I have a client right now that's in Victoria, Texas, and they're trying to throw him off his property for no real reason other than he's just old and they think that they can take him out. But that's just not the case. And, here, that's what we do at the community, House of Yah community outreach. We help people all over the country. I can't say that we'll take your case. I don't take every case that I listen to, but I take what I feel is the right cases. And I'm being real selective about it. But anyway, I won't go into that too much. But, I just think that, Brian, people, it's like they get the sugar in their mouth and they just put their underwear on their head and run down the street, go get a $35 license plate and put it on their car. I don't get it, man. I yield.
Yeah, a lot of these things are pretty hilarious that we run across. And, one of the things also, people listening to this, for instance, with the situation with going out and getting a 30-year mortgage, because that's really the best option available to most people.
Sure.
Well, there was a gentleman I was listening to, a very popular financial radio weekly caller guy. He's been on for years and years. And he was in a private little interview, and somebody was asking him about, what he does in life and things like that. And he was talking about the world travels that he does. He loves to
Mm-hmm.
travel the world. And he was talking about how he likes to ask people questions. And he was in a taxi in another country, and he was asking the taxi driver just about his basic life, if he's married, where he lives at, do they own their home, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And he asked me, he says, well, how did you purchase your home? Did you get a mortgage? And the taxi driver just kind of turned and looked at him, and he said, listen, the whole idea behind mortgages, that's more of a Western thing. That's more of a United States thing. He
Mm-hmm.
said, in the regular world, if you want to own a home, it is either handed down to you through a grandparent or another parent, or you come together with funds that maybe your parents or grandparents help you with, and you flat out buy the place. That
Mm-hmm.
is how most people in the world actually own their homes. Granted, a lot of them might not be as nice as the ones that Americans are living in, but they also, they may not be this 5-bedroom, 3-bath house with a 3-car drive-in garage with this in-ground pool in the back, where they're paying, $4,500 a month minimum. But you know what? They may be smaller, they may be more simple, but you know what? Those people are going to bed and being able to go to sleep at night and not worrying about how they're going to pay that mortgage that's coming up, or how they're going to keep the lights on, or how they're going to keep groceries in the fridge for their
That's right.
offspring.
That's
But
right.
I was mentioning earlier that a lot of people, sure, that 30-year mortgage might be their best option, but there's other things out there happening in the private that people don't realize is happening. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Myself, I no longer, I sold the interest I had in the couple residents at home I had, and people have asked me, "Oh, you're buying something else?" And my mom has even asked me about it. I said, well, if I do, I'm going to go about it completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And their attitude is like, how? You're not going to go get a mortgage? How else are you going to do it? People don't realize that there's something out there that has been operating for quite a while that the big banks do not like at all. And it's called private bankers.
Mm-hmm.
And I run into them, like you said, it's about paying attention. I heard
Mm-hmm.
somebody talking here a while back, and he was talking about how he does work on homes for, a friend of his. Well, just that little bit of information right there said, wait a minute, he does work on homes for a friend of his. Well, either this friend owns a bunch of rentals, or he's involved with something else, such as
Mm-hmm.
private banking. And so I
Sure.
started prodding him a little bit, and sure enough, his friend was a private banker. And these people, they'll look at, what you think is your credit or whatever, and they'll take a look at your income, and they'll decide whether or not, they can look you in the eye, unlike, Bank of America or unlike Wells Fargo can. These guys
Right.
can look you in the eye, they can feel the grip of your handshake, and they know where you live. It might only be a couple of miles away from them, and you're going to make your payments to them at a much different interest rate than probably what the banks are going to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you're going to have a better relationship with that private banker than you'll ever have with Wells Fargo or Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or any of these people. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an option right there that I'd really suggest to people.
Well, and there's lots of other options in the private sector as well. Once you start understanding the private and how these things actually work, and I say not you, but I mean people in general, when they understand and when they get it and they really understand it. Yeah, there's private bankers out there, but actually you can do it yourself. There are cash policies that you can purchase and pay on them for 15 months. And then, after 15 months, if it's $1 million policy, guess what? Now you can leverage that. Now you can borrow against it. But you got to have the other things in your life in order first. You've got to have a good sense of mind to understand how your your personal business as a personal transmitting utility is actually operating. And once you start assessing those tasks, then it becomes easier to step out and start doing some real estate things and things like that. And if you want to know, that's how these guys are doing it. That's how all these guys are doing it. If you look on YouTube right now and TikTok, there's people walking around with handfuls of cash. Like I have never seen, I'm telling you, I'm about to turn 50. And I have never seen so many people walking around with a bunch of cash like I have seen in 2022. I mean, lots of cash. The Gas Monkey Garage. He's got a $300,000 deal, but he's walking around with 300 grand and he's throwing it right in front of you. There's something changing. There's something happening, and and money is probably not American money is probably not the best things to have your credits really converted to right now. You might want to be converting those to real estate. You may be wanting to converting them to other things. But if you're going to buy something in real estate, you have to do something to safeguard you. And I'll give you an example of watching the other people. When you go in and open it, I'm just going to tell you, Wells Fargo, those guys will steal from you faster than anybody. Okay. So what's the first thing that happens when you walk into Wells Fargo besides the hello, how are you doing, and where's the bathroom? The first thing you're going to get when you start doing business with those guys is they're going to give you a fee schedule. That's right. They're going to tell you how much everything costs, while you're filling out your name and all that, because, you can write your name and everything, but they just want to see that you can. And you're over there doing your thing. They'll flip out that little fee schedule and say, well, here's our fee schedule. This is what we charge for all of our bank services. And of course, they'll make up some along the way too. But nevertheless, there's a disclosure. Now, how many of us normal people have actual fee schedules filed somewhere that can protect us? I mean, like in your state, actually, not in Georgia, not in somebody else's state that you're not doing business in. I'm talking about your state. How do you get there? How do you do this? These are the things we need to be working on. These are the things we need to be thinking about. And here's why. Because the minute they make a presentment to you, that's your first lesson in equity right there. You just accepted their fee schedule. And the minute you accept their fee schedule, they're good. So when your bank does something stupid, like they make a mistake, you know what you do? You forgive the mistake, but then you send them a fee schedule. And if you tell them, if you make another mistake like this again, and don't send them, it's going to cost you $4 million or some dumb crap like that. Be a businessman. Don't be a tyrant. Okay? Be reasonable. Stop being a stupid ass, because people won't take you seriously. But if you honestly send your bank a notice saying, hey, this is what you did, or after their apology letter, after they reversed your credits or whatever, and you send them the notice and you say, look, man, if you do this again, this is how much this is going to cost. Well, why is that the proper order? Because you have a breach of contract. Now, you can't bring these things up until you breach the contract, guys. That means you can't have court in your living room and say, oh, well, that dude over here came over here and he explained it all to us with his underwear on his head, and it sounds good to me, so I'm going to run with it and go condemn my life too. No, that's a bad idea. But you know what? That's every one of these teachers, Brian. That's what they send them out to do. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And on top of it, when you see some of these different people teaching things, try the best you can to look at the people that have stuck around them the closest and see what ends up happening to those people.
Yeah. Look what happened to Heather Tucci's friend.
Well,
at least he got the RV, though. He did get to keep the RV. They didn't take the RV back.
Oh, wow. Well, is he going to be able to still enjoy that when he gets out of prison, or?
He's probably got 8x10s. It's probably up in his cell.
So he's got pictures of it.
Look, Sally, here's my RV. I got those fools. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you still in the crib.
Well, like her situation, I was following that, and I was looking at some of her paperwork going, if anybody has ever seen any real paperwork, they would laugh their ass off at this stuff. But you just look at her name. Yeah, oh, yes. Yeah, right. I mean, come on. How scary is that? So that really shows you what you're dealing with in this life. But you even look at her last name. Her last name is TUCC1. UCC1. That's her last name.
It is UCC1. That's funny. Have you heard of this guy? I wanted to ask you about this guy too. This is another one of those 1099. His name is Brian James Barrett. Have you heard of this guy?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of interaction with him.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have somebody on the. Well, actually, I'm not gonna blow it. I'm not, but I am gonna tell you that I'm gonna invite this guy onto my call, and maybe we should invite him on your call too. Maybe we should do one of the. Maybe we should invite him on your call and have him do like the whole. You should see this. You should see this paragraph of nonsense he sent me about this whole thing and this and that and this and that. And I asked him the fatal question. Do you have any court cases or anything like we could look at so I could just kind of read how these parameters are working or what you're talking about? Oh, no. But the guy I met, the guy that I learned this from, he's gotten over 400 people out. Let me tell you something. If I got 400 people out of jail, my name would be everywhere. I mean, I'd be on the Tonight Show by noon before it was even tonight. I'm telling you. Would you agree?
Okay. Yeah. You know what, Timothy, I believe I recall what you're referring to, and I know exactly where he found that information at. And I don't know if the person or the gentleman who divulged that information, if that particular recording is still up or not. But I remember when it was first up, I listened to it, made notes of the names, who it was, what was being done. And this was involving bankruptcy, if I recall correctly. That was part of it, wasn't it?
No, it's a one-trick pony. It gets
right.
It does bankruptcies. It gets houses out of foreclosure. It turns Peter Pan into a black dude. I mean, all kinds of stuff, man. It's crazy.
Well, this is where this came from. Where it came from was there was a guy, and he did get, I would say, upwards of 400 people out of jail. And what it was people that were in jail, primarily in Puerto Rico for child support. And what he did is he would have their significant other go and get power of attorney signed over to them, which is one of the steps I believe Brian had mentioned as well. But they get power of attorney signed over to them. And then they go and they file a voluntary bankruptcy. And I recommend people research all this stuff. See what a voluntary bankruptcy is compared to an involuntary bankruptcy. Learn the perimeters of these things. But anyway, the significant other would get a voluntary bankruptcy put into place, and included in that bankruptcy, whether they had car loans or whatever the case may be, but included into that bankruptcy would also be that court case where they were in jail for child support. That would be part of the bankruptcy. And this was the thing. This is the thinking, and the thinking did work, because it's like this. If you have a debt, all right, and it's being reported on by a debt collector, while you are disputing that debt, so think of bankruptcy the same way as disputing, while you are disputing that debt, then that debt cannot be reported by the Equifax, Experian, those guys. Okay, that has to go away until it's cleared up. So what they would do is, once that bankruptcy got filed, then they would turn around and take the paperwork from there, walk it over to the jail, and show them. And normally within 2 or 3 hours, those people were out of jail. Okay.
In Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico. Now, what I did is, because I wrote details, the names, all that stuff when I first heard it. And I went and looked it up, actually, on Justia Law had it listed there. They had the case. They had the case listed. They didn't get into the great details of it, but in reading the 3 or 4 pages they had, it did elude. I could see, yeah, that was exactly what was happening, and that what was being done. Well, what they did is the state turned around and came after him, and I believe the charges were like practicing law without a license, something along those lines.
I think I remember hearing about this guy.
Right. And And they did put kind of a twist on it, although the way the guy set it up originally, if he had set it up differently, had it structured differently, then his outcome probably would have been better than it ended up being. But
Right.
yeah, so those principles do work. Now, I read what was written, I think, by Brian on that. And the beginning part of it, yeah, worked some of the steps to what this guy was doing, but then got thrown into a bunch of other things of developing a trust and putting in a trust and then doing this and establishing people as fiduciaries and all these other things started piling on top of it. I'm like, what are you doing here? You know,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
taking a very simple recipe and you're making mud pie out of it.
Exactly. That's what I'm hearing from Tim. He says once the IRS has been informed of a misprison of felony. So hold on, let's just stop right there for just a minute. So number one, here's one thing he's missing from his process. Okay. And you're talking to somebody that's actually wiped their record. That's right. I own guns. And I certainly wouldn't be able to do it unless I knew what I was doing. So what he's missing in just in that little sentence right there is that he needs to ask for the 1098, the IRS form 1098. That shows that they taxed out everything and they have to get permission from the IRS in order to go any further with your crime. But I'm going to tell you, in most cases, they don't. So if you know how to ask for the 1098 properly, and I'm not going to explain it tonight because you can come take my class. It takes hours for me to explain this to you. If it could be just typed out in a sentence, people wouldn't be in the dark right now. I mean, that's just bottom line. And people think that you can just send text messages back and figure this stuff out. That's not how it works. But if you ask for the 1098, that is the proof that they did run it to the IRS. And in most cases, they do not. So when you ask for the 1098 and they don't give you the 1098, then they go into what is the mode I'm trying to think of? They go into like a oh shit mode. We need to fix this. Okay, whatever that is. And usually they will let the person out. Or like in my case, you could look up my stuff, and I mean the ATF has looked it up, and it's just all blacked out. Like the cases come up. But as far as anything that's happened, anything that's on any of those, none of it's readable anymore. So that's why. And that's how that stuff works. So just getting right there, when he says, once the IRS has been informed of a misprison of felony, well, they're informed with the 1098, but she doesn't know that. And this is what happens when you're dealing with a professional student that sits there, listens what somebody else is saying, and then he just repeats it because he doesn't really know. And that's kind of what I found from this guy. And then he says the 1099 OID by fake lender without having any written express prior consent to the probate to your public estate / suspicious activity. Claim a 3949A. Let's just stop there. I have filed numerous 3949As and they don't do anything. Nothing. Okay? The courts don't get excited. Nobody gets in trouble. Nobody goes to jail. Court cases don't get overturned. What happens is you start convoluting and you start mixing public and private stuff in these courthouses. And now it's like walking into a Christian church and start screaming Buddha, 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 Buddha. Okay? These people are going to get pissed off at you and they're going to use their resources and burn your little butt to the ground. Bet. So I'm going to tell you, if you're listening to Brian James Barrett, you're listening to what we call a professional student. He doesn't know SHIT or SHITTY. He doesn't know that either. He doesn't know any of those things. He's just repeating this stuff. And this is a trap. Anna Von Wright does the same thing. This is a trap. Just like Brian was saying earlier, there is no such thing as these state citizen nationals. You're either a man on the land or you're either in control or you're not. You're either in the truth or you're in that other stuff. That's it. Plain and simple, man. Would you agree?
Yeah, so many times I'll see people writing different things or giving advice or whatever. And number one, if you're going to get some serious advice on how to handle a situation, you're not going to get it on a social media thread from a post. Not going to happen that way. And so when I see these people that go, and they make up a word salad of all of these legal terminologies that the average Joe absolutely doesn't know, but he knows there are a bunch of legal terminologies. So all of a sudden, oh man, this word salad looks really delicious to him and everything. You know, when I see that, the first thing I think, and I've even commented a few times on it, I'm like, who invited Oswald Bates here? You know, who invited Oswald Bates into the thread? You know, if anybody remembers him from In Living Color,
Sure.
he was the jailhouse lawyer wannabe or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. Undouche me.
Yeah, I remember that guy. He was a hoot. But I mean, I just think that, people just need to wake up, man. They need to see what's going on, and they need to find out that, you're never going to find truth from a man, not the complete truth. And the reason why is because we ourselves are only professional students to the real truth of life. We really are. All we can do is really repeat what we've experienced and what we know is true and correct. And, for me, Brian, tapping in and really changing my life and making, tapping into Yahweh and getting to know who he is and that sort of stuff, and it helps me know when people are lying to me or not, because you can smell it, you can see it, when they don't know, because you're standing in absolute truth. When you read in Ephesians and it talks about putting on the full armor of God, the first thing it says is to put on the truth. That's the very first thing. When you're putting on the whole armor, the first thing you want to put on is the truth. Why? So you have a place to stand. Because it's hard to have a war when you don't have a place to stand. It is. So you got to have truth. And I think that's where these guys are really falling short, is that they don't have any truth. They're just repeating stuff. But they're repeating stuff from a fallible source. I yield. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a fallible source. That brings many memories to mind where I'll hear people get up and they'll be teaching on something. And normally within like 30 seconds or so, I know exactly where they're getting the information from that they're teaching on.
Mm-hmm.
And as they go on and on, I shake my head because I think, before you keep teaching these things or believing them, when this was first told to you, why didn't you go and research it? Why didn't you go and look it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why didn't you go do it first? Anything I've ever shown people, I've actually physically done it and seen the fruits of it. That's when I'm comfortable showing it to people. Bottom line.
Same.
I mean, but I'll hear people get up and they'll teach like Revolutionary War. America borrowed $1 million francs from France for the Revolutionary War, and so they owed France. Okay, hold on. Put on the brakes right there. Go to the Great Oracle and see what kind of money France was using at the onset of the Revolutionary War. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what they were not using. They weren't using francs. No, they were using the Louvre. Right? It was silver they were using. So right there, that statement in itself, it tells me this guy has never researched any of the information he's regurgitating.
It looks like we have somebody with a hand up from a 903 area code. Did you want to take that?
Yeah, we can take that. Let me jump over there. 903.
That's Oklahoma.
Okay. Now. I don't know. 903, you're unmuted. If you would like to let us know what your thoughts are.
Jump in.
What's working? But you don't like
I just have a question concerning the American national thing. My understanding is, and I've done research on it. Yes.
And I bought you some. I don't like that.
So my understanding is that I've done research into what the government lists American nationals as, and y'all just very clearly pointed it out that there is no such thing as, there is a such thing as American national, but it's government created, correct?
Right.
Well, correct. Yeah, there is a such thing as an American national, but there is no such thing as a state national. From what I can tell.
So from what I found, and I'll message Brian it later. according to them, they listed it as a state nationals or whatever, and they had different terminologies for, like, Texas was a Texan, et cetera, et cetera. But it's been a while back. I have it all on my computer somewhere. I can find it. But I'm just trying to understand is, since the courts really don't necessarily work that way, because I've tried it and I failed miserably. So what? Just don't worry about that. Just you're an American national and don't worry about the state nationality.
Personally, I don't think there's any need to claim any position, because whatever they think they want to see you as, they're going to see you as, regardless of what you say. And the bottom line is that's really not what's important anyway. You want to follow up with that, Tim?
Yeah, I just jumped in. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. You know what? I clicked out because I was going to try to show him some of my, I was hoping he'd have some visual, because I was going to show some visual here, but I don't know. I'm waiting for my camera thing to reload. For whatever reason, it's not loading. But help me out again and catch me up, because I lost.
Well, the question was using, like, the American state national information, because he said he had tried using that with INCOR, and he said it had failed miserably. And so his question was kind of, what do you use? And I said, personally, I don't use any of it, because whatever they want to define you as, no matter what you say, they're going to see you as whatever they want to see you as. But to me, that's not really the most important point anyway.
Well, I don't know. I have a different take on that. Basically, so I have a family, and everything I do is for my kids. Everything I do, short term, long term. When I get up in the morning, we put it down. My kids are the beneficiaries. So what I did is I put everything in my life. I put everything into a trust.
Yeah.
And after I put everything into a trust, everything became literally for my children. They're the beneficiaries, and I just work here. And so for me, I operate in a private de facto status, as I'm in it. I'm in a private de facto status, but I'm like the guy at Walmart. I just work here. And as a matter of fact, I just took care of a ticket using that exact same defense, stating that, the vehicle is held in trust, and it's being used literally to drive my daughter to work that day, or to travel to get her to work that day. And so therefore, because I was using it for the benefit of the beneficiary, I don't have any personal liability, and the trust can't be sued. So that's kind of how I do things, and that's kind of, so I basically run my life as a business. And so everything is in a trust. And so that way, when I die or when I go away, everybody steps in and they step in their stations, and my ship continues to run as it's supposed to. Think of it as like, if you were to leave the house and you left the refrigerator door open, who would you call to come and close the door? You'd have somebody to call. If you didn't feed the cat, you'd call somebody to feed the cat. It's the same thing. You're just putting all those people down on paper now. And they all have jobs. And by them having specific jobs like that and working for a private entity that cannot sue nor be sued, then that puts you in a fiduciary position. And when you're in a fiduciary position, you're in the most powerful jurisdictional place that you can be in your person. That's why judges act the way that they act, because they're acting as a fiduciary towards the public. So they think they can do whatever they want to in the name of the public. So that's kind of how I do it. And I have been doing it and teaching it since 2015. Nobody's gone to jail, and it works really good. So if you want to hit me up on Facebook or anything, you just look me up under Timothy Damron. Send me an instant message, man. I'd be happy to answer more questions for you or anything like that. Or I can answer them here too. It's fine. Doesn't matter.
All right. Did that help you out, Joe?
That helps out a lot. I do have a question, though, and I'll yield the floor back to whatever. How do I contact you to, I guess, understand how to navigate in the private compared to the public.
Well,
Brian's been teaching us, and he's doing a good job. I'm just trying to find out what I can do.
No problem. Well, the first place we do is we do it privately. Because I'll tell you that I think that's one of the biggest flaws that I see in people doing these processes, is that they do things to legitimately make themselves stick out. And whenever you see somebody doing that, run, because that means what they're doing is toxic, and you're going to get hooked into something that you may not want to get hooked into. So just get away from stuff like that. If you want to be in the private, do things that are in the private. Like, for example, if you're going to dress like a man, you're not going to wander to the other side and go look at high heels just for the hell of it. You know what I mean? So stay on the man side. Does that make sense? I guess it's an easy way to say it, you know? But
All right, cool. Thanks, Joe.
I'll tell you what, you can email me, emmett.damron@yahoo.com. That's EMMETT.DAM as in Mary, RON @yahoo.com. You can email me anytime, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible, and I will try to answer your questions as best I can. But yeah, go ahead and hit me up anytime. I do have a travel class coming up next month. I haven't released the date yet. I'll be releasing that on Monday night's call, which is tomorrow night. So if you want information on that call, you guys can join us too. And we're going to be doing more of this too. I'm sure Brian will be on the call with me, and so we'll be doing some body slamming on that deal as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We dig it. Well, what do you think, man? It's 9:00. You wanna send the ponies home tonight? We'll just pick this back up again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. on my side.
Sure. Sounds good. Thanks for being here, Timothy. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thanks for having me,
Thanks for being here. Absolutely. And, people just try and keep that mindset and keep that eye open to, things that are being done in life really aren't the way you've been taught. So kind of watch how other people are. Just pay attention. There's little clues drop, for a while.
Amen to that.
One of the best clues, I think, would be, down here in Southern Florida, and you're sitting at a stop sign light, and you're surrounded by a Mercedes, Lamborghini, you name it, expensive ass cars all around you. Well, on election day, go and take a little tour through those parking lots. You see any of those cars? No, you don't. You see the old pickups, you see the Toyotas, the I'll say lower class maybe vehicles. That's what you see. Guess what? You don't see those people running out to vote.
Nope. That's right. That's right.
All right, everybody.
Definitely
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Obviously, man, and we'll pick it up tomorrow night on my channel. So you guys want to join us tomorrow night at 6 p.m. 1-888-570-7020. We'll be doing more of the same. Brian will be here with us too, right? So, and then next week, I got a gal. Next week, I got a gal. I don't know if I said this before, but so we were talking about Brian with his little OID stuff. Like I said, next week, I got a gal that actually went to prison for listening to yahoos like this, and she's going to go into detail as to what happened. It's taken her 3 years to even talk about this. And I know her personally. She's really, really a sweet woman that really got into this fight because her husband passed away, owned a company, set up. All right, man. Well, then I'll see you Monday night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Tim.
Yes, sir.
Tim, sorry, we lost like the last 30 seconds from you there. If you want to repeat that.
Oh, you know what? Don't worry about it. I mean, it's just, let's just pick it up tomorrow night, Monday night. We're going to be talking about Bree. She'll be coming on in the next couple of weeks. This is a woman that listened to this 1099 OID jazz, and she's going to be talking about the failures and what it did to her, and why it's so important that we do things the right way. That's all.
Do you want to mention your group that you have on Facebook?
Yes. The name of actually, we have a nonprofit. We have a full-blown nonprofit. I am the director, and we have a DUNS number. We are a registered 501c3. And the name of our organization is the House of Yah Community Outreach. And we are a nationwide outreach for the entire country. We help everybody. But all of our proceeds and everything that's earned, as far as dollars and cents for classes and things like that, all go towards feeding our homeless here and our homeless vets here in Bexar County, Texas. So we appreciate y'all's support, and thanks for having me on tonight. Thanks for letting me throw that little spill out there. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. Thanks for being here, everybody. And like I tell you every week, learn who you really are, where you're really from, and where you're really at. Because
Absolutely.
that's where everybody's been deceived. Hey, good night, everybody. Love y'all.
All right.
Bye.